Hi Countryside, it's Joe Smith, your General Manager. And many of you know we had our annual membership meeting that was held on March 14th. And during that meeting I gave an operational update on all the departments of the club. And one of the departments that I received a lot of positive feedback on was our dining department. Specifically the part of my update that spoke about reservations and volume and flow into the kitchen and how it affects food service. Since I gave that presentation a few weeks ago, I've been asked by several residents if I could record and have that presentation available on our website. So what I'm going to do today is take you through the few slides that are specific to that part of our presentation from the annual meeting. So we're going to put the slideshow up and talk you through it. So we're going to start our slideshow with a diagram that I presented to our board of directors when I interviewed for this position back in May. One of the questions they had asked me was specific to dining and how I would ensure consistency across our dining operation and improved overall experience. And I shared with the board of directors that essentially quality dining experience is made up of 4 key parts: engaged team members, engaged members, perceived value, and lastly operational efficiencies and workflow. And this is really what we're going to focus on when we're talking about reservations and volume and flow through the kitchen. So when we talk about operational efficiencies and workflow, we're really discussing managing the volume and flow of members and guests while providing the best possible experience. And it really is all about timing. And it's also a very fine balance between how much volume we can do and how efficiently we can do it. So this season, you've all been asking me 3 main questions that I've heard routinely from members. Hey Joe, is the kitchen big enough? Hey Joe, do we have enough staff in the kitchen? Hey Joe, no one's at that table. Why can't I sit there? Well, over the next few slides, I'm going to make an unusual analogy. And I hope to answer all 3 of those questions for you. And I hope that you understand the correlation between the analogy I'm making and these 3 questions. And hopefully you have a better understanding of our dining room operation. So we'll start here. What do managing a golf course and managing a dining room have in common? Well, providing a great experience in each requires the proper control of the volume and flow of people. And how do we manage volume and flow of people on our golf course and our dining room? Well, let's start with golf. Volume is defined by our 18-hole capacity. We manage flow by our tee time structure and our tee time spacing. And it's important to note that we can increase volume by adjusting the tee time spacing, but it's at the cost of the experience. So in other words, we could do 6-minute tee times versus 8-minute tee times and put out additional volume onto the course, but you're going to have a subpar experience. So when we talk about volume and flow on the golf course, we have a couple different options that are very structured. This is an example of 3 types of tee time structures. We have a straight tee, where essentially we put out a foursome every 8 minutes, and each foursome falls in line consecutively. A setup like this, we could put about 200 golfers on the golf course. We have a double tee example, where essentially we break the golf course into 2 nines, and we put out a foursome on each 9, and then they follow consecutively, but we have to close the 9s for a 2-hour period to allow those morning times to cross over. But essentially this allows us to put over 250 golfers on the golf course. And then we have a shotgun start. As you all know, Countryside does an awful lot of shotguns. And this is essentially where we put a golfer foursome on every golf hole, and they follow each other around the golf course. And if we double up on golf holes, we can do 144 golfers, but that's not the greatest experience. So why does golf work, essentially? Well, we know the volume capacity, and we've scheduled the flow. Essentially, we know who's coming, we know how many, and we know when. So let's go back to that main question, that first question I asked. How do we manage the volume of flow and people on our golf course and in our dining room? We've talked about golf. Let's talk about food and beverage. And specifically, we're going to talk about a la carte dinner service on our busier nights, Wednesday through Saturday evenings. So this is very, very important. We define volume of a dining room by what the kitchen line can handle, not the number of tables in the dining room. And we manage flow by reservations. And yes, there is much more to it. So this is our kitchen line. This is what determines our capacity in the dining room at any given time. So generally speaking, the volume of our kitchen line can handle about 50 meals every 30 minutes, which gives us 300 dinners per night. To make the analogy again for you, the volume of the golf course on a double tee format handles about 32 golfers every 30 minutes, or 250 plus golfers per day. So when we talk about flow and reservations, keeping in mind that our line can handle 50 meals every 30 minutes, but in the dining room, in the restaurant, there's many more variables that are associated with food service flow. For example, the time that orders are actually placed. Many times that varies from the time you actually come in for your reservation. What is actually being ordered? Salads, appetizers, sauteed items, grilled items. You see, each item on the menu is associated with a specific station on the line. Specifically, how they're prepared determines where on the line they go. So for example, if your table of 8 comes in and all order steak, it all goes to the one guy who works the grill. Takeout orders are a big variable. We average about 30 of those a night. And then a walk-in business, where we average 100 plus walk-ins each evening. So reservations equal manageable flow for us. Currently, we take 30 reservations every 30 minutes. And that allows us to accommodate 20 walk-ins every 30 minutes. The 30 reservations plus our 20 walk-ins gives us our 50 meals every 30 minutes. So obviously there's a problem though. Well, the average number of walk-ins, 100 plus, come in between 6 and 6:30 p.m. Our average number of takeout meals, another 30, happen between 6 and 6:30 p.m. This essentially makes the flow into the kitchen 90 plus meals at 6 p.m. and 90 plus meals at 6:30 p.m. And ultimately this starts a chain reaction of delayed service. This is typically what it looks like on a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or Saturday evening. So let's make the connection here. Hypothetically, what would happen if you all just showed up to play golf at the most desired time? Here's what we think would happen. We think 100 of you would show up expecting to play at 8 a.m. and the other 100 would show up expecting to play at 8:30. And we all know what that would cause. You'd have to wait a little bit, or a lot. And essentially this is what happens in our dining room. Our most desired dining times are 6 and 6:30 p.m. It's the same reason why it's difficult to dine in Naples without a reservation. All the restaurants deal with this similar situation, similar challenges. So let's recap the two areas here. In the dining room, we define volume by the kitchen line. The golf course is defined by the number of holes. We manage flow by reservations in the dining room. We manage flow by the tee sheet structure. We have many variables that affect flow in our dining room. The golf course has very few. And we can increase the volume and flow in our dining room, but it is at the cost of the experience. And same goes for the golf course. In either case, we can always put out more capacity than what is manageable, but it does affect the experience. So back to these questions that I asked, that I shared with you towards the beginning. Joe, is the kitchen big enough? Well, we definitely need a renovation. The workflow and the traffic flow through the kitchen is challenging, and we are very challenged on prep area and storage area. Do you have enough staff in the kitchen? Our line supports 5 stations, and it's not possible to add any more. This is the team that works that line every night. When we talk about the balance between volume and efficiency, through a renovation, we could certainly duplicate stations to increase volume. In other words, have 2 grill stations, 2 saute stations. However, we lose efficiency, and we're adding additional labor to do the same amount of covers on a nightly basis. The other thing to keep into consideration is that those additional stations on the line are only going to be used at certain times of the year, primarily 3 or 4 months on 3 or 4 nights, because they're just not needed all the time. So this is what I'm referring to when I talk about that fine balance between volume and efficiency. The other question you've been asking, hey Joe, no one's at that table, why can't I sit there? Well, remember, the kitchen line determines the volume, not the tables in the dining room. Table seatings are spaced to manage flow into the kitchen. We take, ideally, 50 reservations every 30 minutes. That means that you could come into the dining room, most likely, and see open tables. But they're spaced that way to manage the flow into the kitchen. So on our annual survey, if you've taken that, we asked a question, an operational question. Reservations greatly help us in managing our business and providing a quality experience. Would you be in support of the club requiring reservations Wednesday through Saturday evenings to include all areas of dining? This is a big question, and I have to assume that there's many mixed feelings out there. It's something that we're going to ponder from an operational standpoint over the summer. But rest assured you, when we make these operational changes, if this is a direction we choose to go, it's because we believe it's going to help us provide a much better experience. And that's really what we're here to do. I hope that you found that helpful. As always, if you have questions about any operational occurrences at the club, I encourage you to come see myself, Kevin, Chef Jay, or Andy. I've received many positive compliments from members who really opened their eyes to some of the challenges we have. And I can assure you, these are challenges that I've dealt with at every property that I've been at. And again, our desire is to provide the best experience possible. And sometimes we need some help with that. And again, making reservations, just as you do in golf, very rarely do members come in to play golf without a reservation. Really helps us manage our business and provide a memorable experience for you. So as always, I thank you for watching. I appreciate your comments, your feedback, and your support. Thanks again, and have a great summer.